So in the past few weeks since the Division 2's launched, I've uploaded a few different build videos, and the most common question that I get by far is one, how do I get the vector? And two, what's the best way to get some of the pieces for this build? Well, sadly, the answer to question number one is the same as the answer to question number two. Do the activities that reward you with the most loot per time spent farming. So I decided to get super fucking nerdy and write down all of the activities that I did as well as how many pieces of loot that I got from each of them. I broke these activities down in loot per hour, and I used 1 hour as a benchmark because I know not everybody has a limited amount of time to play the game, but I figured 1 hour was a reasonable amount of time that somebody could set aside for farming for weapons or gear. I also broke it down per activity. So even if you don't have 1 hour, you can see just how much you can expect from doing like one challenging bounty or one hard mission. So yeah, I got the results for that as well. Now I know a lot of variables can go into how many pieces of loot you can expect to get per activity. For example, how long it takes to fast travel back to the White House to get another bounty, dying in a mission, or just the average amount of time the average person would take doing a challenging mission or a stronghold. So yeah, I tried to account for these variables as best I could, and I realize and understand that your results may vary. You might get more, you might get less. These are just the averages of all of the multiple runs of each of these activities that I got. And another thing I can say from testing is that this game just absolutely throws loot at you. No matter what activity you decide to do, whether you don't like going to the dark zone or don't like doing bounties or missions, no matter what you decide to do, you're going to get a lot of loot. But anyways, let me just give you an overview of all the different activities I tested. So I tested the dark zone, the occupied, and the normalized. I did hard and challenging missions as well as a couple strongholds. I did level 1, 2, 3, and 4 control points, and I did normal, hard, and challenging bounties. So for those of you that just want the TLDR, I'll just go ahead and let you know right now the level 3 control points netted me the most loot per hour with 65. Number 2 was tied with hard missions and the occupied dark zone at 60 pieces of loot per hour. And number 3, we had the normalized dark zone netted me 56 pieces of high-end loot per hour. So yeah, if all you wanted to know was what the best activities were to do, there you go. Please drop a like on the video before you leave. Thank you very much. And for the rest of you that want to find out how I got those numbers, prepare to be bored to death and get super nerdy. So let's start with the bounties. So as I said, I did normal, hard, and challenging bounties, and this is the data that I was able to get from each of these. I ran each of these difficulties about 3 times a piece, and this is the average amount of loot I was able to get from each of these. So you can see the normal bounties, I was averaging about 1 piece of armor and 1 weapon per run. The hard bounty, I was able to get 1 piece of armor and 4 weapons per run. That little cog icon is representative of mods. And then challenging bounties, I was averaging about 4 pieces of armor, 3 weapons, and 1 mod per run. I also put how much time it took me to complete each of these, with the normal obviously being the least amount of time invested into completing. The hard took me about 4 minutes to complete, and the challenging took me around 9 minutes on average to complete. How I got the loot per hour number was I took 60 minutes, divided it by how long it took me to complete the bounties, as well as I accounted for about 2 minutes to fast travel back and forth to the White House to get the bounties. I then multiplied that by the total number of pieces of high-end gear that I got from each of the activities. And for those of you that don't know how to change the difficulty of the bounty, I'm going to show you real quick. So what you want to do is head upstairs in the White House, talk to Otis Sykes, he's the bounty giver, and you're going to click a bounty, and you're going to see over here to the right, it's going to tell you what the difficulty of that bounty is. So you can see here that Finlay Tickles Elmo is going to give you 3 random pieces of equipment, and when it says equipment, it's just random. It could be an armor piece, it could be a weapon, it could be a mod. And obviously the higher tier the bounty is, the more pieces of loot you're going to get from them. The challenging will this particular one will give you a guaranteed glove, 1 guaranteed weapon, and then 3 random pieces of gear. And then obviously the normal bounties will give you less pieces of gear, but one caveat with the normal bounties is if you're searching for a certain exotic, for instance, the Merciless, it drops from named hyena bosses. These normal bounties still have named bosses at the end of them. So if you go around looking for at the normal bounties, it'll tell you there's a small pack of hyenas carrying. So this is a hyena named enemy. So killing her will have a chance to drop the Merciless. So that's one caveat with the normal bounties. It does give you the less amount of loot, but like I said, if you're farming for an exotic, look at the named or the faction of the named boss at the end, and you can go around farming for that specific exotic you're looking for. So yeah, that's the amount of loot you can expect to get from bounties. Just to recap, normal you can expect to get about 30 pieces of high-end loot per hour, hard about 50 pieces of high-end loot per hour, and challenging about 44 pieces of high-end loot per hour. If you're hell-bent on doing bounties, I would recommend doing hard, as that offers the most loot per hour from the bounties. Jesus, I hope you guys aren't bored yet. I told you it was about to get nerdy. Alright, so let's just move on here to the missions. You can see I did hard, challenging, as well as a few strongholds. I did American History Museum, as that is one of the fastest missions you can run. I put 8 minutes for the hard and 11 minutes for challenging. I feel like most people could probably do this mission in that amount of time. I've run these much faster, but then again, I've got a super sweaty in-game PvE build, and I figured most people don't have the time to min-max a PvE build, so this is the time that I figured most people could do it in. Alright, on average, the amount of loot I was getting was about 5 pieces of armor, 2 weapons, and 2 mods for the hard mission. For the challenging mission, I was averaging about 4 pieces of armor, 3 weapons, and 4 mods. And then for the strongholds, I ran this twice on hard and challenging. On average, I was getting 5 pieces of armor, 4 weapons, and 5 mods. But it took me on average about 23 minutes to complete. So the way I came up with the loot per hour number for the missions is I took 60 minutes, divided it by how long it took to do each of the difficulties, and then I accounted for about 1 minute or so to fast travel back to the beginning of the activity before you could start it again. So you can see the hard missions, you can expect to get about 60 pieces of high-end loot per hour. The challenging missions, you can expect to get about 55 pieces of high-end loot per hour. And then the strongholds, you're only going to be able to get about 35 pieces of high-end loot per hour, seeing as it takes so long to complete them. If you're hell-bent on farming missions, I would highly recommend you do the hard missions, as you will get the most loot per hour from doing the hard version. Alright, next up we got control points. I did all 4 levels of control points, and you can see here on the level 1 control points, I was averaging about 2 pieces of armor and 2 weapons. For the level 2 control points, I was averaging 1 piece of armor, 2 weapons, and 2 mods. Level 3 control points, 5 pieces of armor, 2 weapons, and 3 mods. And then for the level 4 control points, I was getting 9 pieces of armor, 5 weapons, and 4 mods. But level 4 control points take a long ass time to complete. And especially if you're solo, it can take a really long time. On average, it was taking me about 23 minutes to complete level 4 control points. And this number also includes the time it takes to raise the alert level. So for the level 3 control points, it was taking about 8 minutes, level 2 about 5 minutes, and level 1 just 3 minutes to complete. How I got the loot per hour number for the control points, took 60 minutes, divided it by the amount of time it took to complete the control point, as well as I accounted for about 2 minutes to be able to fast travel and find another location to start another control point. So you can see level 1 control points, you can expect to get about 48 pieces of loot per hour. Level 2, about 50 pieces of loot per hour. Level 3 control points, you can get about 65 pieces of high-end loot per hour. And level 4, only 42 pieces of high-end loot per hour. The level 3 control points are going to offer you the most loot per hour of any of the other activities in the game, so I highly recommend, if you want to farm control points, do level 3, and then if you're solo, do not even touch level 4, as it can take you a very long time. That 23 minutes doesn't even take into account how long it would take if you've had to fast travel back and forth from dying so much. So, like I said, just don't even mess with level 4, just go level 3. If you're not confident that you can do level 3, level 2 is also the next best option. I will say though, it is pretty cool seeing the ground littered with high ends at the end of level 4 control points. But last and certainly not least, we have the Dark Zone.
Yep. God dog!
I had to put that in. That guy's reaction cracked me up. But there's a lot of different ways you can farm for loot in the Dark Zone. You can clear landmarks. The landmark bosses will drop you high ends. You can go around opening the caches with Dark Zone keys, or you can simply pick the locks if you don't have keys, but picking the locks will cause you to go rogue, so keep that in mind. You can go to the DZ safe house every day. There's a locker there that will give you 1 high-end weapon or 1 high-end piece of armor. As long as you have the DZ perk called Daily Winter active, you get that at DZ level 10. You can also get the DZ supply drops. They drop about once every 20 minutes. And you can either open them or steal them. And last but not least, you can always just kill other players in the Dark Zone and let them farm for you. This isn't very nice, so I'm going to leave this one up to you guys, whether you want to do it or not. So finding the numbers for the Dark Zone were pretty easy. I simply spent 1 hour in the occupied Dark Zone and 1 hour in the normalized Dark Zone. And at the end of it, I was able to get 60 pieces of high-end loot from the occupied Dark Zone in 1 hour and 56 pieces of high-end loot in the normalized Dark Zone for 1 hour. I did this with a combination of different things. I would go around and open the Dark Zone chests. I would clear landmarks, get supply drops, and even kill a player here and there. And if you're worried about having to go into the Dark Zone, especially if you're solo, it's really not that scary, I promise. But for those of you that are, just not that confident about it, I will be having a video coming out in the next few days just on some tips and tricks for solo players going into the Dark Zone, how to, avoid being ganked, how to avoid the, 4-man people running around with the OP builds. So yeah, keep a lookout for that. But right now, honestly, the DZ's kind of dead. There's not that many people in there. So you can easily go in there and get a good, hour run just going around and collecting all the DZ caches and get yourself like 50, 60 pieces of high-end gear per hour. So get in the Dark Zone, check that out. But yeah, for this video, all I wanted to do was show you guys how much you can expect to get from going in the Dark Zone and looting for about an hour or so. But yeah, that's it for the Dark Zone and all of my testing. So just to recap, the top 3 ways to get loot in this game right now is number 3, the normalized Dark Zone. You can get about 56 pieces of high-end loot per hour. Number 2 is tied between hard missions and the occupied Dark Zone at 60 pieces of high-end loot per hour. And the number 1 way to get high-end loot in this game is to do level 3 control points, and you can get about 65 pieces of high-end loot per hour by doing level 3 control points. So yeah, that's going to do it for the video. That's all my testing. That's all the activities I did, all the loot that I got from each of them. Like I said, I know a lot of people don't have a lot of time to play the game, so I just wanted to get some information out there for you guys so you can make the best of your time, so you can get the most amount of loot per hour. And now you know which activities to do to be able to do that. So yeah, I hope you guys found this useful. If you did, please drop a like on the video. Subscribe if you want to see some more Division 2 content from me. I do try to upload every single day. But like I said in my last video, I do work another job. So these videos like this that take a little longer to edit and just put together all the graphics and everything do take a little longer for me to put together. So yeah, drop a like on it. I really would appreciate it. And yeah, that's going to do it for me, guys. See you in the next video. All right, later.